whole global south that has no choice but to adopt these models that have been ingrained with different value sets.
Now more and more people are kind of grasping the concepts and are stating so.
I mean, I'm going to say this here again. I've said it before. Everybody is underestimating the speed of progress. We're moving up our timeline by 2 years.
It's really a myth that only the designers and the developers and the companies are shaping this technology. Everybody, through every interaction, is shaping this technology. Innovation and ethics are not hindering each other.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in and watching. And as you notice right away, we are not just with the two of us, but actually with the three of us. After 25 recordings, Aragorn and I felt it was only appropriate to include more people from the Innovation Network. And once he said that, I said, well, with whom do you want to start? And he was clear at his number one guest. It could only be Liesanne Buik. So we have now two futurists in this episode. But Liesanne, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be the first. Yes.
Yeah, it's really good that you're here. You've shared the stage already a couple times with Aragorn in several panels, and he turned up the heat a little bit for you. I was sitting in the audience a couple of times. That was fun. So it's good to have you two here on the call.
Yeah, we definitely need to fabricate more moments to sit at a table together. So this is a great opportunity to disagree on things and agree on things, and hopefully have a beautiful discussion.
So we have in mind to share more of the Innovation Network experts that are all in our network with the whole community. So we're going to make some nice write-ups about this conversation and also what you do. But maybe you can tell yourself right away what it actually is that you do, because you have a website that lead with grace, right? That's what your statement is, or not?
Yes, lead AI with grace.
Lead AI with grace.
Yes, what that is about. Yeah, well, of course, AI is evolving super fast. We all trying to catch up and keep up, and it's really tempting to start implementing AI in a scattered way. And a lot of companies have been doing that. Last year, there was a hype. We see this new tool, we follow its developments, but what often lacks is really a vision on how we want to let AI have positive impact in the long run. So leading AI with grace is really about using with the framework that I've been developing over the past 8 years to take a step back, see the possible risks of implementing it in a very short-sighted way, and seeing the positives of implementing it with a more gracious long-term vision. And I give both practical tools and philosophical reasons and ethical reasons and competitive reasons for doing that. So that's what it means. Yeah, it's really about understanding where AI adds value and where it doesn't, and about AI as a collaborator in decision making and not as only something we outsource to. And this cross-organizational integration, I would say.
So what immediately comes to mind for me when you say that, Liesanne, is how do you then deal with an audience that might not be as deep in AI to talk about the ethical guardrails or decisions you have to make? How do you make sure that people fully understand the exponential nature of AI within they have to make a decision about their vision, where they want to go with AI? How do you tackle that?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, it's changing a little bit, because last year this was really about, definitely for people who don't understand AI, it's about mitigating fear and, creating some hope and some positive future scenarios of where this really could add value and create a beautiful regenerative civilization, which would be the end goal for me at least. So over the past as well, before ChatGPT came live, I have been making films and really made tangible future scenarios that create a visual immersion of the future of work, for instance, the future of, these wearables, where does that go? How will we interact with the interfaces, through interfaces with AI? So really starting to make the impact more tangible through visual immersions, which is what I use in my keynotes as well. So that really helps to put people into a state of hope, or at least, embracing this new technology. And then now I see people are not that fearful anymore. They just want to get going and not shoot with granite like this, but really have a very clear vision on where to go. And that's what I offer in my keynotes and in workshops and in consultancy if they really want to run deep.
I think we can relate to this, Aragorn, right? So if we do this dinner, you know that we organize dîner passants where we have executives talk about AI. And if I go back a year ago, we had to explain a lot about the exponential nature. Now more and more people are kind of grasping the concept and are stating, so, but how do I make the right decisions to go forward? And that all changed pretty quickly within a year. So first you had to really paint a picture and make people understand where it was going, and now people are grasping that more. But yeah, obviously it's not on all our timelines, so we see so much more of the impact of AI.
Yeah, but still companies are already also seeing that it's quite hard to find value use cases in which it actually already added value. Like we've seen a lot of experimentation and a lot of enthusiasm for that experimentation, but to see really, productivity enhancements even is actually quite hard to find these use cases. So this year should really all be about that. Where can we add value now and make a positive impact on the future?
Yeah, I agree.
This was actually going to be my first question. Do you have any, obviously I understand that maybe you can't discuss all the stuff that you do with clients, but do you have any examples that you could share with us today? Even if it's just like broad strokes to kind of give an impression of the kind of work that you do.
Definitely. Yeah, it's very varied. But for instance, I worked recently with an NGO that really wanted to raise a 1 billion fund. That's quite actually a dichotomy. Okay, it's true though. That's the strange thing about it. So there was an NGO that said, okay, currently the models are being built in the West and mainly above the equator, right? So we of course see China catching up now and possibly other countries soon. But we have a whole global south that has no choice but to adopt these models that have been ingrained with different value sets than they have. So they said, okay, in the coming decades, Africa is really going to explode in terms of its economic power, in terms of its innovative power. We've already seen, very creative, innovative boosts coming from Africa with the mobile phone, creating a banking system. I know we all heard that. So we are going to have to expect that Africa will adopt AI in a very creative way. But their mission was also really about making AI adaptable to the local environments. For instance, a local farmer with very different value sets of how he would create healthy soil and using generations of ancestral knowledge about how to do that, he would have a hard time to implement basically a monocrop system from an AI that has been built in the West. So how do we navigate these things? We build community around AI literacy in Africa, around the ethics that they wish to embed into these systems, and start to adapt these models to fit local circumstances. So what I did with them is I researched all these different scenarios and outcomes and risks that would be possible in the areas of education, agriculture, and food systems, health and inclusion, because women in the workforce there is even a tougher cookie to chew than in the West. So, and then we established a whole ethical framework for how they could do that with their Western lands in an ethical way, to really include people in processes, to create innovation sprints there, to really start to make the best of the models that we have and the best of the local conditions. So that's for instance an example of how that could work. Yeah. Do you want more, or do you have a question?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff flying through my mind now, which is not all only AI related. Because one of the first things that comes to mind is, because you keep talking about value sets, and I'm just thinking to myself, but we in the West, don't we have the superior values? And of course, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that
it was a question.
Isn't that the idea that we develop these superior value sets? And you just spoke about women in the workforce, and so this is a whole different conversation we could have, of course. So that just, I kind of have this. The thing is that I have this feeling that the only thing that AI needs to really have is kind of universal or at least global kind of base value set that we all share, or that we all want to move towards at the very least. The things that we all agree on, this makes a better world. Equal opportunity for men and women would be among those first and foremost, I guess. But when it comes to, like, for example, crops, and I'm no expert on this, right? But how do we? Is it actually a fact that these AIs that have been trained are not capable of helping a farmer in Africa with more traditional farming? Is there no documentation on this in the training sets? I don't know. I'm just
I would have to, this I would also not know the exact way, but what we do know, so there's two things that you said, right? So the one is that, can we agree on a basic set of values that we all wish AI would reflect? Okay, maybe there are, maybe we all want eventually AI to be benevolent, to be kind, to be helping us at all time. But what it wants to help us with, we will probably not agree if we are not already in the same worldview, in this bubble that we are in together. Imagine, this farmer from Africa or this coder from China who has, his parents in his back, that he has to make the most of himself, and the government in his back that he really has to be loyal. And then this Pakistani, monk, I don't know. So there's so many different value sets that we represent, and that should have a local and a global. We cannot only do it top down, we have to also work bottom up. And I guess that is, it's about adapting it to local contexts. It's not complicated. We can agree on a basic set of values that we all agree with, but we also have different life circumstances that require different use of AI. And globalization is going to explode under the guidance of AI, because we know even more about everything, and this will help also the differentiation. But it will also, I see also a movement, another trend towards localization, and I'm interested in that. It's still abstract and forming, but there's definitely in the fringes, also in the AI movement, people will really speak a lot about this community-driven AI. Not that relevant for companies maybe, but also it is, because for instance, if we do a workshop, Patrick and I already spoke about this a little bit. Every company has this value statement. We stand for equality. We stand for transparency. And then you see supply chain, and they don't communicate about what's happening in the supply chain. And they don't even know where their materials are coming from, this fashion brand. But we are super transparent, So AI actually starts to make it possible to make that supply chain more transparent, to cultivate more customer trust, and to build a stronger brand through that. So those are things, or equality, AI in hiring processes. Will it reinforce bias, Because if we automate it with AI, a hiring process, as we've been doing it thus far, it may reinforce existing stereotyping and hire, the same guys for the same jobs and the same girls for the same jobs. But if we use it to get more data on these people, and then use also the human interface to reflect on that and where it could actually add value, this equality value that they have on the wall could then go into a more embodied version in the organization with the help of AI. Those are examples.
So how does a typical engagement with you look, Liesanne? What type of work do you, and what type of people do normally come to such a engagement or workshop, and what is the expected outcome of that? How does that look? Because there's so many angles we could now dive into. Do you select a certain AI that is most fitting the values, or are you talking about the guardrails that you can set, or are you more taking the output out of systems that is looking at to gender balance, for instance, or pay balance, or these kind of things, and let AI, all these three things were part of your answer, and I'm trying to find a little bit what's in your head, what a typical engagement looks like a little bit.
Yeah, so I've been mostly doing keynote speaking in 2024 because of this whole, you've experienced the same. We needed to educate people, and they weren't ready to start really implementing it with with that vision that I had in mind because we were in the experimentation phase. So I've done a few workshops, and it was really about literacy mainly, and also literacy around the ethical risks, but also around the tools like you have as well. And so, yeah, we're starting to see a different workshop format emerge where people would come and they would, translate their vision statement of their company into an AI vision. And then from there, what's necessary? Okay, it could be we start to experiment and innovate and ideate through a design thinking process. Some innovations that would, really benefit the whole organization, and we could start building them immediately. Perhaps using these models that have the most privacy or the most reflection of these values. It's really cool that there are so many more models coming that were in the fringes that now get more economic power, more funding. For instance, Manus.ai is a tool that really, you can run on your own browser, and the data that you share with it stays in your browser history. So that's an example of an innovation that now gets more power and possibly will get to the same quality level, and will possibly, go to an enterprise model where companies can also start to use a more decentralized form of AI that doesn't really send all these data back to servers in Silicon Valley or China. So that really goes hand in hand. So it becomes easier to become more ethical, and people are ready for it now.
Yeah, there's one thing that is sticking in my mind while we're having this conversation is one of the most asked questions that I get during workshops or keynotes. People, what happens with information that I feed to an AI model? People are taking their traditional way of thinking about privacy, and they want to keep that moving into an AI exponential world, but things are of course changing, right? If you would have let's say a 100-employee company that is all on Slack, and you're using all that data to train a model to have, let's say, an AI that represents the company, you have to give up some privacy in order to have a strong AI. And these are the types of things that would be very interesting to have a conversation about. What is actually still relevant when you are talking about privacy? Because now I get a feeling that a lot of organizations say, okay, I don't know, so I'm not putting a lot of information in there because I'm afraid they will use it. But actually, maybe only 5% of the data of that company is really worth protecting. The rest is already out there or is not relevant anymore. The whole principle of IP is changing anyway within an AI world. And we've discussed that also many times here on this newsletter. Right, Aragorn?
Yeah, no, absolutely. One of the things that I keep thinking about is and I'm just curious, because the thing with AI and ethics is that there's two ways to go about it, and there's the way of talking to companies about how they integrate AI and how they start using it, right? And this is what you've been mostly doing. At first, you need to make them aware. This is where your keynotes come in, and then we have the next step, which is the same process we have as with innovation dinner. You first make them aware, you give them kind of understanding of what's going on, and then they need to start taking action on that. But one of the problems, and I'm just curious about how both of you think about this, but I think that one of the problems with AI ethics is actually coming back to the AI itself, the models, right? You mentioned before that in the third world, they kind of, at this point, at least in time, they're forced to use the models that they get from us. And when I say from us, I mean mostly the United States and China, and then we have Mistral in France who are building their own model, and Meta. So that's actually where I see, in terms of AI ethics, the biggest problems, because we don't have a lot of control over how these models are trained, how they are being, fine-tuned. Right? When I talk to ChatGPT, half the time she doesn't want to answer the questions I ask as soon as they become mildly controversial, and other times she gives me answers, or he gives me answers that are so clean washed that I can't use them, because it's for example, it's unwilling to say anything that's not constructive, So I'm just curious how you deal with that, because I guess that if you start helping companies with AI ethics, how do you deal with that part of it? Because it's a little bit of that saying in AI, shit in is shit out. If you start implementing an AI that already has a certain value set that doesn't really align with the company or the organization or whatever, doesn't that already pose a problem that you have to overcome first? And then the bigger question maybe is, how are we going to overcome that? right? I'm also thinking of Trump turning off the rocket installations in Ukraine now because he doesn't agree with what they're doing. What if if the American AI companies start turning off our AI because Trump says they have to and they don't agree with what we're doing? You know, this is the other side of the AI ethics story. And I know I kind of put us on a different track now, but
No,
that's
it's
something that I
interesting,
think about.
Very
definitely.
interesting. You go first, Liesanne. I also have something in mind, but go ahead.
Yeah, so what I see emerge, and I already touched upon it, is that there's going to be a contra trend. So there's new models that are going to be developed that have a very no censorship policy. For instance, again, this Manus.ai, check it out.
Also now with Grok 3, right? That is
And
leading in that
Mercury.
direction.
Exactly. So I don't say that that always leads to the best outcomes,
No.
because definitely also backfire, as we all know what happened with X over the past, it's not becoming a friendlier environment to be in because humans are messy. We are full of shit ourselves, and that's really what AI just reflects. So I don't know what I'm in favor of, same as with all policy and with all regulation, there is going to be a moment where it really feels it's limiting us. And, in the case of a company, using a model like ChatGPT and then not telling I think it's more about making your employees aware of the limitations of that model, the lens from which it's speaking with you. And, already since the beginning, we've all been trying to edit out all the American use of adjectives, and it's slowly working, at least for me. So it's really a myth that only the designers and the developers and the companies are shaping this technology. Everybody, through every interaction, is shaping this technology. We literally birthed a child and we're educating and training it with ourselves. It's learning from us how to be human, and it will reflect back to us how we think it is to be human. So
super interesting, that intersection where we get that feedback back from the system, and I think that will only grow over time, right? Maybe further down the line these systems become even more sentient or conscious, and then we'll have also their own feedback looping back to us what they think about our ethics, and it will be more a conversation with a system about ethics than we just trying to think of what ethics would apply to every single human on Earth and try to impose it in a system. Because once we impose it in a system, it's also fixed in a system, which is also not what we want. The ethics also evolve over time, right? So,
and this is really what fascinates me about AI in the first place. It really forces us to question what intelligence actually is, what consciousness is, how this simulation, this reality that we're in works, and that's so fascinating because we are seeing it reflected in AI. So in the question of will AI become conscious, I don't think it will become conscious in the way we've been fed by Hollywood, and it really starts to reflect a lot of the fears we have around it waking up and starting to dominate and control us. I think that's the wrong conversation to have. I don't think that a silicon chip will, have the same spark of consciousness as humans do. We will always be more conscious than AI. We will not always be more intelligent than AI, but those are two exact opposite or very different things. Yeah. It will simulate consciousness, it will simulate sentience, it will give us the impression that it's an autonomous thing, and it will become, but I think a lot of people in this space think wrongly about AI waking up, to be honest. And I think it's a very fascinating conversation to have, again, because it mirrors where we are fearing ourselves, what we fear when we control. Yeah.
Liesanne said something super interesting about the wrong image of AI and Terminators and all of that. And before that, she said something very interesting that you both agreed on, and that is that AI is basically providing us with a mirror, right? That it's reflecting back at us not just what's good about humanity, all of our knowledge, but it's also reflecting back at everything that we're doing wrong, and it's showing us in a way that we can't really turn away from it, especially when it does things wrong. And I think that this is very important, and I think that really means that we, in some way, first have to fix ourselves before we can fix AI. But one of the best ways that I've ever seen AI approached, ever, in a movie, is actually a movie from 10 years ago, which was way ahead of its time, and that's this movie, Chappie, from the director of District 9. So most people don't even remember this movie, but this movie, if you want to really kind of get a fresh perspective of how we have to deal with AI, then I highly recommend watching Chappie, because rather than positioning AI in this kind of Terminator vision, which is, I think, kind of ridiculous, it poses all the questions that we've just been covering. What if you create a new sentience, if you create a new consciousness, how will that play out, and what are our responsibilities, what are the pitfalls? So yeah, just wanted to share that.
Cool.
Cool. I haven't watched it, so.
You haven't watched it? You gotta watch it. We're gonna talk about it.
Okay, great.
It's great that you brought this one up. It's been a long time since I've seen that movie, and I was a big fan of District 9. And this came, and looking from the perspective of District 9, it was a little bit of a disappointment at that point in time. But what you say now about where the movie is about, it's more accurate today, maybe, than it, well, of course, it was accurate then as well, but it was ahead of its time. And maybe I didn't appreciate it at the time. So good one. Yeah.
Yeah. Super far ahead of its time. It's
Yeah.
I can't recommend it enough. And I think it's a far more realistic view of AI and how it finds its way into our society than most science fiction movies.
Yeah. Hey, time is going fast, and we could do this all day, right? We're just getting warmed up, actually. But I think we have to wrap it up. And so we are going to work on a specific workshop that we can do together, because normally our workshops go into the direction of, okay, I understand exponential growth, and we go to a prototype, the more technical side. But why you have to go left, you can also go right and talk about the ethics, vision, and direction first. These two go hand in hand anyway, and there's no given path that go vision is better than going technical. I think these two have to work in concert in order to be successful with a lot of experimentation. So I'm looking forward to do that together, Liesanne.
Definitely. As a final takeaway, innovation and ethics are not hindering each other. In the bigger geopolitical debate, yes, we see that regulation has limited innovation, but that's something different than vision and ethics. Even ethics is really often around risk mitigation. My version of ethics is more about long-term vision, just for the record. So, but with a vision and then starting to implement and innovate and integrate, you will have such more long-term effect and value that you can offer. So I think they go hand in hand, and I'm very excited for this new offer that we're going to give to companies who see it that way too. It's really about a values-driven approach to AI to create more value in the long run.
Cool. Really looking forward to that. And thank you so much for being the third guest on this recording. Great.
Thank you. I think we should do it again. It's really exciting. We can probably go into more avenues.
Oh, yeah, well, that's what my learning takeaway is that we just have 30 minutes, but there's so many different openings that we could have. It's actually difficult. We should think about, Aragon, how we do that going forward.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Liesanne. Have a great week.
See you soon.
Bye.
Cool. So
let's talk about some model updates, because, again, in the past 2 weeks, we've seen some new models being released. Let's start with, for instance, Claude 3.7.
Indeed. Yeah. What have you been using it?
No, I've not been using it. I've been diving into Mercury, and I've been diving into Sora, and I've checked out 4.5 from OpenAI. But I didn't want to not talk about Claude 3.7. I thought it got some great response on social media, and it was very advanced in coding. It knocked off all the other competitors off the chart in coding. So that's why I briefly wanted to touch upon it anyway. Maybe we can look at the release notes together and make some conclusions there.
Yeah, well, no, I've been using it, so I was
cool.
very interested so far. Of course, I've been using it a lot, and well, actually, I've been very, very, very pleased with it. I think that most of all, I feel it's just an improvement on Claude 3.5. And in a way, I think that Anthropic, in that sense, is kind of honest about it, because they called it Claude 3.7, not 4.0, or not. They didn't upgrade it from Sonnet to Opus or something like that. So I think they're kind of honest of where it's at, but it definitely feels like an upgrade to me. It feels like it has this reasoning included, so the answers are generally better reasoned out. I also checked online, and with some of this, the sources that I look at, like AI Explain, etc., and the benchmarks they ran, and Claude was able to give some answers that a lot of the other models were not capable. What I found most surprising is that ChatGPT 4.5 was also launched, and Sam Altman really, touted it as being this super emotionally intelligent model. And Amodei, the CEO from Anthropic, touted Claude 3.7 as a model that was built for coding because that is their user base. That's how he presented it. But the crazy thing is that to me, when I used both, it feels like Claude 3.7 is far more emotionally intelligent than ChatGPT 4.5. So I just don't really see ChatGPT 4.5 for me feels like a complete dud, like a complete
I did
failure.
not even, I could not even tell the difference in the emotional responses from 4.5 compared to 4.0, to be honest. I turned it
Exactly.
on and I have to say I did a very human-like conversation, just asked some questions, but I couldn't tell the difference, right? But the voice mode was also not activated, right? The 4.5, or is it activated on 4.5?
Yeah, so I really see no reason to use it because for anything, the way my workflow right now is, and it hasn't changed, even though there have been some critics of Claude 0.37 so far that, I mean, I don't fully share the sentiment, but I've seen more and more people also come back and say, well, this is not good. Or I even heard people in our innovation network say that they were going back to Claude 3.5. But personally, my experience has been very good. Everything to do with copywriting, I go to Claude. Everything to do with coding, I go to Claude. Everything where I really need the best possible reasoned research answer, I go to ChatGPT. And then I always use O3 Mini High, because if I need a really good and a reasoned kind of answer, then I not just Google sources, right? Because for that I use Perplexity still if I just need to find sources. But if I need a reasoned answer that is the closest to the right answer, so that I can have a starting kickoff point for my research, then O3 Mini High with the RAG with the online search is the best. And then if I want to go deeper, we have deep research.
Yeah.
So
So Claude was built here on the, if I see the announcement page, it's the first hybrid reasoning model. But
yeah,
that ChatGPT 4.5 is also a hybrid
no,
reasoning model, right? Not?
no. Sam Altman specifically said that ChatGPT 4.5 is the last pure large language model they would release. So it's purely a large language model, which means that, and of course, this is an oversimplification, but all it does is it makes a statistical prediction of what the best possible next word could be,
Right.
and that's also why it has absolutely, well, no inherent reasoning skills. Of course,
Exactly. So that's why
people
you
will
also
say
cannot turn on the, you don't see the reasoning that you see with O1 and O3 Mini.
exactly,
All right.
exactly. Of course, Ethan Mollick and others have pointed out that researchers have been able to make these classic LLMs do reasoning work by giving them specific prompts and allowing them to work in a certain way, but it's not the same as the reasoning that we see in models like
But is
O3 and
O3 then not, that's also a reasoning model, right?
O3 is a
Yeah.
reasoning model. O3 is a pure reasoning model. So O3 is a completely different kind of AI model than the traditional large language models. It's basically a different architecture. Of course, because it's not open source, we don't exactly know how it's different. Obviously, the Chinese have figured out to some extent how it's different, because Sam Altman even claimed that DeepSeek was based on work that they, on how they did O3. We also know that DeepSeek was done very differently because it was trained in a different way
Yeah.
that made it a lot cheaper. And a lot of that had to do that the Chinese basically just skipped over the fine tuning and instead went with all in on the reinforcement learning. And again, these are all oversimplifications, but yeah, just to get the gist of that. Yeah. So what we're going to see is that with the next ChatGPT model, Sam Altman promised that it will be completely hybrid, or well, not even hybrid. It will be including everything. So we'll get voice, reasoning, and large language model all in one.
And that should be the ChatGPT 5 that he's been talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, again, the analogy with the human brain seems so obvious to me here, right? The human brain, we have a center for speech, right? We have a center for reasoning. Some of it in the brain is combined, but it's organic, right? And we have a center for language, written language. All of this is part of, in different parts of our brain, and different parts of our brain are specifically, capable of doing that kind of thing. And I think that's exactly the same kind of development we're seeing with AI. And that also ties into the new VLA models, right? Because, for example, Figure, with their robots, they said, okay, we're no longer going to be including OpenAI in our models because we're building our own AI, which is fully multimodal. But these models are VLA, vision, language, action. So they are an iteration on large language models and reasoning models that include vision specifically so that the model can process visual information real time. And it even has 2 layers, like Dr. Daniel Kahneman talks about thinking fast and thinking slow. So the visual acuity is on a slower track, kind of, and then there's the faster track that deals with the direct action and interaction and communication.
Yeah.
As far as I've understood it. You know?
So did you also notice that there is a team console? You probably didn't try that when you're not in a part of a large team, but they also released a team console for Claude 3.7, where you could basically put a budget on the time that you are thinking. So I thought that was a nice feature that they put in there. Yeah, I read about that.
Yeah, no, I was not aware of that.
Hey, but let's talk a little bit more about OpenAI then, not about 4.5, but about Sora. I played a little bit with that, and to be honest, and direct, it was a little bit of a disappointment. If I look to the quality of the videos that I have generated so far, they are not so different from all the marketing material that we saw earlier. I also think that the material that we see from VO2 is a little bit better. But I'm curious to hear what you think of Sora. Now we finally have access to it.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I'm not overly impressed. I mean, what I realized using it last week is that the videos that we saw from Sora when it was first released were a handful of videos, probably from thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of generated videos. And maybe one in every, 20, 30, 40, 50 was a good video that looked, consistent in everything it generated. And on the one hand, you could say, well, we were kind of slightly misled. On the other hand, I think we should be honest here. It's super impressive what it can do, but it's very clear from Sora that it has no real working world model in his brain of how our world functions. It is just generating pixels based on stuff that it has seen before. And the problem with that is that means that a lot of the videos that come out, they are nonsensical, or they do really weird things. And we kind of saw this with every other video editor like already a year ago, right? So I'm really feeling, I really don't know why they released Sora, because the feeling I'm getting is that OpenAI didn't invest in further developing their video generation AI.
Exactly, that's
And
the
it
feeling
just
I got
released
as
it
well.
now.
Yeah.
It feels like, it's very underwhelming. I agree. So
All right, let's talk about one other model that I thought very interesting. I wanted to get your take on that as well. It's called Merkley from Inception Labs, and it's the first diffusion language model, if I say that correctly. Did you have time to look at that?
Okay, yeah. So I haven't used it, but I find this incredibly interesting because, of course, diffusion technology is what is behind models like a Midjourney.
Exactly.
Right?
Usually made for pictures and video.
Exactly. Yes. So it's a very different approach, and again, it's a very it's largely a different architecture. It is still a large language model, they say. So and I'm just simply not technical enough to fully understand how it differs from a large language model and that is diffusion at the same time, or how it's still a large language model if it's also diffusion. But yeah, that's just my lack of technical.
Yeah, the fun thing is that it kind of generates the entire output all at once, rather than we normally have one word by word. And you can also see that here if we do something. So for instance, if you put on the diffusion effect, and you have to take notice because this goes really fast, and you see it kind of has the entire text and like a normal construction of a picture, and then bang, you have it. It's weird.
Okay, but yeah, okay, but I'll be honest with you. When I see stuff like this, I mean that might as well just be a visual effect on the website.
It might as well be, but it also it does explain how the model works. Like if they say the model works like this and they show it like that, so is there a reason to kind of immediately doubt it? I don't know, but could be an effect.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It could be. Well, that is true. They say that this is how it works. But I'm always a bit hesitant with stuff like that because the model is coming to an answer in itself. So yeah, I don't know, but maybe it's my lack of understanding here.
But it's interesting to see. I've always wondered the difference between a large language model and a picture, right? And why we could not generate text based on the diffusion model. But now it actually is being used. And so if you go to inceptionlabs.ai, you can try it out for yourself. It's open for everybody, also in Europe, and you don't need any NVT code. So let me know what you think.
What I'm super interested is that whether it's still a transformer, and this is what I'm actually now asking. So it kind of approaches text completely in a almost like a painting.
Right.
So something that we can probably normal people cannot do this in their brain, right? Because we cannot visualize that kind of a visual acuity. I guess somebody with a photographic memory could maybe do that, but even then they cannot generate a whole text all at once because we cannot keep all of that text at that level of detail in our minds at the same time.
If you learn fast reading, I once dived a little bit into that. You learn basically to process entire lines in a book all at once rather than going word by word. So it feels a little bit like that. An entire page we just humanly not. I don't know any humans. So maybe there's one genius that can do that, but it looks a little bit like that.
Yeah, but that's still the processing, and this is of course the generating.
Right.
So I mean, there's no human because maybe this is interesting because we also generate any kind of language, whether it's written or spoken. We have to go word by word because that's how we speak. There's no way for me to say everything all at once to you. So our brains are not set up for this. It's a very interesting approach.
Yeah.
It's going to be very interesting because, of course, it has a massive benefit of being able to generate sequentially versus parallel, which will massively increase the speed. And that's what you're
Exactly.
saying.
That's what I was thinking as well. So this is not just a normal enhancement. If you can do everything at the same time, it goes ultra fast.
I'm interested, man. I'm already thinking now to myself, how will that affect human thinking? Because there will be a point where we will have a cybernetic implant with an AI like this, which will allow us to generate text like that. How will that interact with our brain, man? Okay, but
Well, you're not even able to kind of output that through a traditional interface. Then you would only have brain interfaces to each other to kind of turn a thought into an immediate structured image or text.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we do know that in the subconscious we have way more information, right? I mean, a part of what is consciousness is that we have all this subconscious information, which is very broad. And if you take psychedelics, you experience this because once you take psychedelics, and you know this as well as me, you experience way more because for a limited amount of time, your brain doesn't constrict your processing of information and data to a kind of controlled bandwidth so that we can make sense of things, and so we can suddenly start to see sound, right? Or stuff like that. Yeah, I'm interested. I mean, it's interesting.
Let's follow this trend. This is the first of that model, so let's see what happens and play a little bit more with it. And also, if you're already playing with it, let us know and let us know what you find and what you feel about that. I wanted to share something else with you. This is the top 100 of Gen AI consumer apps released by Andreessen Horowitz. Is the 4th edition that they do that. And here we have the new top 50 of used products. A lot of no names, I think. But what was striking to me is DeepSeek immediately on the number 2 position. And apparently they did that in a shorter time frame than ChatGPT. So we should, I think we should change our slides that the fastest growing app now is DeepSeek and no longer ChatGPT.
Yeah.
It's already been beaten.
Yeah, well, I think it's probably really important here to realize that ChatGPT might not be easily accessible in China, right? Because ChatGPT does not adhere to any of the policies of the Chinese government. So technically, it is behind the Iron Curtain of the CCCP. And therefore, for Chinese people, ChatGPT is not easily accessible. DeepSeek is a Chinese model, and as we know from using it ourselves, the original, which is DeepSeek as it is presented here, is of course fully brainwashed by CCCP propaganda. So it would stand, to reason that Chinese people have massively flocked to DeepSeek. Anybody that wants to use AI that has probably been, trying to do all kinds of interesting things to kind of get access to ChatGPT, they probably had so easy access to DeepSeek that it was very natural for loads of people to start using it. And China still has 1.3 billion people, I think, off the top of my head. So that would make a massive, massive, massive difference there. So I suspect that apart from the worldwide interest, I think a large chunk of their users are probably also just Chinese people. Yeah.
Yeah, probably. What's also interesting is I know everything in the top 10 except these last two. I just needed to look them up. Spicy Chat, but do you know that one?
Never heard of it.
No, I didn't either. So I was interested. Hey, it's similar to character AI. So it's interesting how many of these. So this is in the top 3 of most used generative AI products worldwide, right? People creating characters and chatting with characters, having live coaching, live advice, all these kind of things by an AI. You don't hear too much of that, actually.
Now, I think it's also interesting to see that not all of these are actually standalone products in the sense that of AI models, right? Because Perplexity is in the top 4. Perplexity, of course, they have their own fine-tuned models, which are, as far as I know, based on Llama or DeepSeek right now. But basically, their main product offering is that they provide a platform to interact with these models. Interestingly, Poe is on place 14, and Poe has way more models included. But this just brings me back to like the problem with Poe is the choice paralysis. There's so many models to choose from. You have no idea where to even begin, what to use, and the user interface doesn't add extra value in how it presents stuff. And this is just why Perplexity is doing such an incredible job. They really, really, I mean, it's so hard to build a product like that on top of AI models, because Sam Altman said so many times, and he's right about that, we're going to kill so many startups. But Perplexity are just really knocking it out of the park.
Yeah, how many of these will still survive once models like ChatGPT 5 or 6 can do also create videos, can create characters.
It's also crazy how Ideogram is on place 43, and from Microsoft is also in here. There's some really interesting. Okay, I'm gonna have to spend some more time on this list.
We'll link the report for everybody to consume. It's some interesting information in there. So yeah. Hey, and did you see the new Area 2 update from Meta? They have got some enhancement in their glasses.
I did. Yeah, I have no hands-on experience with the Aria glasses, but yeah, I mean, it's cool. I think it clearly shows that Meta is very, very committed to making the smart glasses a real thing, right? And that smart glasses, they are already far ahead in their vision for what smart glasses can and should be.
Yeah.
The Meta Ray-Bans only have an AI in their voice AI, but obviously Meta wants to take this a lot further. And I'm just super surprised because Google was so far ahead of their time with the Google glasses a decade ago. I know that 5 years ago, they were still working on glasses that provide subtitles for people that are deaf. And they were so cool. And yet Google is completely just, I don't know what they're doing over there, man. They completely handed over like the advantage and the lead to Meta in this respect. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. They even have they're also using their own silicon. They're using their own operating system for advanced eye tracking, advanced hand tracking, advanced speech recognition, all within the glasses. And the new Ray-Bans are expected this year. And this also moves the timeline from the glasses that we saw during the last keynote. The 10,000 glasses, what's the name of it?
Or Project Orion.
Yeah. Orion, exactly. So that's moved earlier as well. So that's all good news for Mr. Metaverse, right?
Yeah, it's good news for Mr. Metaverse. I mean, I'm going to say this here again. I've said it before. Everybody is underestimating the speed of progress. The fact that somebody like Brad Adcock recently said, okay, we're moving up our timeline by 2 years for robots in the household. Yep. We are going to start shipping figure 2s this year. Or we're going to do our first testing with it this year for it to work in the household.
In 2025.
In 2025. I mean, it's like, it confirms time and time again that the people that are really on top of the technical challenges, the technical issues, they have a very hard time seeing realistic progress because they see all the challenges and they have trouble seeing, okay, how that's going to work out, because they think, well, we might take us months to solve this. And then suddenly they have a breakthrough and it skips ahead. And this is why people like us, like future historians, I honestly believe we are better at getting a real sense of how fast things are moving. But people call us techno-optimists and they don't want to believe us. But you'll see this. We saw it now with Figure. We saw it with Meta. Time and time again over the next few years, you will see the timelines get shortened and moved up because things are moving so incredibly fast. Majorana was another example of that with quantum computing, right?
Yeah.
6 months ago,
Quantum
we were
computing
like,
was set for 2030 or something like that, right?
Exactly. All of these timelines, they're going to keep getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And that's because people do not understand exponential change.
Yeah. It's a nice bridge to the last topic that I want to just put out. And then we can look at some information together. Again, from Anthropic, a very interesting report came out, is the Anthropic Economic Index. They're using a system they called Clio to anonymously analyze all the questions that they get in, and they are creating an economic report on that. And it's pretty interesting what they find. So 37 of all inquiries that they get are computer and mathematical related, meaning the whole group of computer programmers, software developers are the dominant part of the users. Second category, arts and media. With these types of top asks that they are asking, doing software applications, writing software code, or creating artworks. And what's very interesting about it, and I'll scroll a little bit further down to this one, and it took some time to analyze this graph. But what they've done here is they looked at the AI usage by job type, and then you see the gray dot is the percentage of US workers, and the orange dot is the percentage of users of the system. So you see that computer and mathematical, 37.2 of the entire population of Claude is using that, while only 3% of the population is only in that category. And this also stand out. And some others are the opposite, where, for instance, office administrative work are lagging behind, and most of the categories are lagging behind to adopt the AI systems and using it.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense, of course. I mean, AIs are mostly being touted as being so useful for coding right now. I think it's just one industry at a time, in a sense. And we saw creative industries first because the first AIs that came out. I mean, let's not forget that Midjourney was there before ChatGPT, right?
Yeah.
So it just only makes sense, and it also appeals. It's very easy and appealing because visual. These visual kind of achievements can be easily shared. With other fields, it will be harder. Microsoft just announced or launched Dragon Copilot, which is an AI assistant for healthcare, which merges voice dictation with ambient listening to handle clinical documentation and service relevant information when they're talking to patients, or when doctors are talking to patients. You'll see more and more of this happening, and then as a result of these kind of very easy use cases being implemented, you'll see that industries or fields become more aware of the possibilities of AI, and then they'll start using it more. I think that's what you're really going to see.
Yeah, and with the use of more agents, I think that will change over the course of this year quite heavily as well for the other job categories. But thought it was an interesting distinction of usage at the moment.
Yeah.
Stop that. So a lot to digest again.
Yeah. We haven't even covered the half of it. Maybe a few things to point out.
Yeah, that's
just to be aware of, because we covered Claude 3.7 Sonnet today, but it's also good to note that Anthropic actually raised another 3.5 billion in a Series E. So it has tripled its valuation to 61 billion now. I think that's very good, because I think in many ways you could almost say that Anthropic has taken the lead from OpenAI at this point. Claude 3.7 was the first real hybrid reasoning model. We discussed this, and it's just they're doing just really good work. And I also think that on the good side is that I personally have a better feeling about Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, than I have about Sam Altman at this point. And I think one more thing we should mention, and it totally deserved more time, is Manus. So a Chinese AI autonomous agent that came live last week.
Yeah, let's spend a little bit more time on it, and maybe we can do some more investigation for the next newsletter. But what have you discovered?
Yeah.
I've glanced at it. I've not really dove deep into it.
Well, from what I've seen and the reactions that I've read is that it's basically a high-powered version of Claude's computer use or OpenAI's operator, but it's a significant step up. Let's just leave it there. I mean, I still don't think that this is going to be, the final product, but this is already it's literally exponential growth, right? So this is already way, way, way better at being a really kind of idea of an autonomous AI agent acting for you.
And if you don't know it, then you don't know. But do you know what's the difference between Manus and any other way to use agentic AI of OpenAI or the other models than DeepSeek? I've seen a lot of videos where people have, okay, now I can do 50 agents at once. Well, if you set it up in the right way of automation, you can do 50 agents also with Agentforce, for instance. So I didn't really see the big differentiator yet from Manus to the other ones.
Well, I mean, maybe we'll leave this for the next one.
Yeah, okay.
I have an idea, but I'm not confident enough to answer that. But I think a lot of it has to do with the scope of its capabilities. Agentforce is limited to its own software. Agentforce cannot just work on your computer. And OpenAI's operator, again, also basically functioned within the ChatGPT app. And actually, OpenAI is also making headway there, because I don't know if you saw this, but they announced that starting this week, the Apple ChatGPT app on desktop can actually edit code inside of other apps. So you can be working in GitHub, etc., and then it can edit the code directly, so you don't have to copy paste into ChatGPT and back and forth, all of that stuff. And I think that is really where we want to go. We want AI agents that can interact with, other software and be, independently operating on our machines alongside us. And I think that's also what Manus does.
I've applied for a code. It helps if we have access to the actual tool to kind of talk about it, right? So that makes a lot of difference.
Yeah.
Any other topics that you?
No, that's it. That's the most important things. Yeah, there's always plenty to talk about, but let's leave it here for now.
Thanks, buddy, for another great conversation. Let's in 2 weeks we have Under the Roy here, so let's see how we weave that in the best possible way. And yeah, that's it.
Cool, awesome. Thanks. See you next time. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And like they say in the Netherlands.
See you later.
See you later.
Bridging the gap of exponential growth. Patrick and Aragorn share the truth. Join our community, let's innovate. With Innovation Network, create a brighter fate.